Hello, everyone. Welcome to the School of Slavonic and East European Studies graduate open session on PhD and MRes. My name is Katerina and I work on admissions. I am joined today by Dr. Michal Murawski, who is an associate professor in critical area studies and also the head of graduate research. We are also joined by Svetlana Smirnova, who is the research program administrator. Please note that the presentation is being recorded. After Dr. Murawski's presentation, I will stop the recording so that you can switch your cameras and mics on if you wish to. If you don't want to do that, then please feel free to put your questions in the chat. So for now, I will hand over to Dr. Murawski, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much, Katerina, for the introduction, and welcome to this session, which is supposed to introduce you to the PhD and MRes program at SEAS, so the types of research graduate degrees that we have on offer at SEAS, and some of the ways to go about applying for the program. So I'll do a short introduction, or 15 minutes or so, and then we can go to a Q&A to answer any questions that you might have, whether from the point of view of intellectual content or your proposed research programs or the application procedures or anything else that comes to mind at all. Yeah, generally speaking, as you're aware, SEAS stands for the School of Slavonic and East European Studies. Actually, SEAS doesn't only cover Eastern Europe or the Slavonic world. The name, as with all of these area studies institutions, is a bit of a misnomer. We also have specialists in Central Asia. We have PhD students working on the Caucasus too. We have linguists working on Finland. We have scholars working on Germany. So in fact, the scope of this Eastern European Slavonic region is much broader than is suggested by the name of the institution. SEAS is part of UCL. As you'll know, UCL is celebrated its 200th anniversary the other year, whereas SEAS this year celebrated its 110th anniversary. It used to be an independent institution. It was founded in 1915 as part of the University of London, but not as part of UCL, by a kind of group of scholars, including R.C. Seton Watson, a historian, and a kind of coterie of diplomats and figures associated with Central and Eastern Europe, and was initially kind of envisioned similarly to SOAS, which is the School of Oriental and African Studies, at that time, the School of Oriental Studies, as a kind of institution for the training of diplomats and spies and basically various other figures associated in some ways with the dying British Empire. Since then, it's moved on a little bit from its days as a kind of handmaiden to empire, and has become a relatively independent, but also not independent because now it's part of UCL, institution, in a very multidisciplinary institutions, which no longer merely focuses on language training and training in the kind of languages and cultures of particular Eastern European places, but which has a much broader disciplinary profile. This is the building of SEAS, completed in 2004, and it's the kind of purpose-built HQ of SEAS, which is supposed to look like Baba Yaga, Eastern European fairy tale house. I gather that was the architect's intention, and is a kind of strange but lovable building in which our institution is housed, and at the very center of which is the SEAS Library, which is a wonderful resource, which we'll come to in a second. Yeah, so SEAS joined UCL in 1999. It completed its building in 2005 at the heart of the UCL campus, and it is indeed, as the figures in this presentation say, the largest academic unit in the UK dedicated to the study of what we call the SEAS region, so as to avoid calling it Eastern Europe or anything else that is relatively more restrictive than in fact the SEAS region allows. But it is the largest unit in the UK dedicated to the study of the broadly defined Eastern European, North Eurasian region, and possibly the largest academic unit in the world dedicated to the study of this region, although you'll have to fact check me on that. But definitely one of the largest and most important centers in the world dedicated to the study of the region. There's over 1,000 students, 100 staff, uh, over 22 BA degrees, 13 MA degrees, the two MRes programs, and the PhD program. The library is wonderful, and it's great to have it at the heart of the institution. Um, and yeah, and it has a bunch of partnerships with universities across Europe and Eurasia, from Czechia to Kazakhstan. Um, the core thing to know about CEAS, which I'm sure most of you already know and are very aware, is that we're not a discipline-bound department. So if you do your research degree at CEAS, you won't just be studying in a single discipline like in anthropology or in history or in economics. I'm an anthropologist and I did my PhD in an anthropology department, and I was which I enjoyed in its own way, but it was very much a kind of disciplinary a silo where I mostly only talked to other anthropologists and had discussions about anthropological theory only, and was in a bit of a kind of echo chamber. And I was very relieved when I first came to my CEAS when I first came to my CEAS when I first came to CEAS for my postdoc in 2014 after finishing my PhD, that I was in an interdisciplinary environment where I was able to have conversations with scholars from all sorts of disciplines who are passionate in various ways about our overlapping porous CEAS region. So this is a great bonus, but at the same time you are at UCL, which has disciplinary departments, so you are able also to make connections, to develop partnerships, to develop your knowledge of and your connections to scholars and friends who represent other academic disciplines. For example, CEAS is right next to the anthropology department of UCL, which is ideal for me as an anthropologist. So I'm able to just cross the threshold with my card on the fourth and fifth floor and hop over to the seminars in the anthropology department as well, if I so desire. So this is a great advantage that you have this kind of double structure of being in a multidisciplinary department, but at the same time have access to the discipline departments at UCL. Um, for more about CEAS, there's training courses in methods, in the social sciences, in qualitative methodology for the social sciences, in things like discourse analysis, but also in quantitative methods for those social scientists who are more quant inclined. Also training in humanities and historical methods, and furthermore, training in languages. And we'll come back to the languages that are available for study at CEAS in a moment. Paid teaching experience is available. So during the course of your PhD, especially if you're doing the PhD program, especially in years 2 or 3, or especially in year 3, you're encouraged to do some PGCE work, so to function as a teaching assistant on some of the modules that are taught at CEAS, or in some cases elsewhere at UCL as well. You can also apply to be a PGTA beyond CEAS, and this is a great thing to do. Not just for your CV, although obviously also for your CV if you're considering a career in academia, it's kind of essential to have some teaching experience, but also in terms of getting to know your material, because if you're just reading as a researcher, as a student, you get to know the materials in a certain way, whereas if you're familiarizing yourself with literature in order to teach it, that's a whole different register, a whole different level of familiarity, and it makes you a better scholar, frankly. As well, you have opportunities to present your work at research seminars. We have the graduate student research seminar at CEAS, which ordinarily takes place several times a term, and at which research students are able to present their work and benefit from each other's feedback. You're able to do field work in most of the CEAS region. Obviously, field work in Russia is not permitted or encouraged at the moment, since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia. But for most of the other elements, most of the other parts of the CEAS region, you are able to do field work, and we have partnerships and connections there, as I'm sure those of you who want to do research on those parts of the world do too. And there's various ways to facilitate that field work, whether it's for archival work or whether it's for participant observation, for interviews, or for geographical field work. There's close ties with various UK and with overseas universities. And at CEAS 2, there's an extremely active research seminar and conference program. So at CEAS, because we're a big department, I think you can see this screen that I've just got onto. We don't just have one seminar, we don't have one CEAS seminar series every week, but we have an embarrassing richness of multiple seminar series. There's dozens of events taking place most week. If anything, there's a bit too much. And I think we're currently in the midst of this during COVID time, there was a bit of a blip, or there was a situation in which most of the research seminars were held online, and the disciplinary kind of culture of going to seminars took a while to recover from that. But I think I can safely say that we're now in full recovery. Like, recovery mode has been completed, and we're almost back to normal. And there's definitely around 10 or so seminars taking place every week, whether they're organized by Fringe, by the Center for the Study of Social and Cultural Complexity at UCL, by the Center for New Economic Transitions, which is a super active center set up by a group of quite interesting heterodox economists at CEAS who study transition in an interdisciplinary way. There's PIMS, Places, Identities, and Memories, which is studies the things that it says on the label, and a bunch of other seminar series that I won't bother naming, but I encourage you to familiarize yourself with. There's a very active CEAS Cinema research group as well, which is relaunching its activities next term. So there's a lot on at CEAS, and you can engage in all of those activities, present your work at those seminars, and also go to them regularly. Of course, we're also in Bloomsbury. CEAS is in the centre of London. The British Library, the British Museum, Senate House, University of London Library are just next door. And another exciting thing about CEAS is that we have student research, student-run ventures. There's the Slovo Journal, which is the graduate student-run journal for the CEAS region, which was dormant for about a year and a half. It was kind of in some sort of extended long COVID hibernation mode, but now it's been spectacularly relaunched with a large editorial board, and is holding regular social events, and is creeping back into action. So Slovo will very much be in full. Regina, who's here, I think is also involved in Slovo in some way, and so she can tell you more about it if you're interested. But there's a lot going on there, and there's an opportunity to take part in the activities of Slovo and get not only publishing and writing experience, but also editorial experience, which is super important, whether or not you're interested in a career in academia or in another field. And at these, we also have International Postgraduate Student Conference, which happens every 2 years. The next one, I gather, is 2026. And this is a very active and exciting thing to get involved in organizing or in presenting your work at. So the research programs, it's possible to go off on tangents on any of the bullet points above, and I have done already. So, to the extent that I haven't yet even begun talking about the research programs, but here we are. So there's three graduate research programs at CEAS. There's the two MRes programs that some of you may be interested in applying to. The 1 year MRes in Politics and Economics of Eastern Europe, which is a kind of super intense MRes program, which is designed to be completed in a year and focused on politics and economics, and the 2 year MRes, which is, I wouldn't say necessarily any less intense, but which has a broader disciplinary focus. You can focus on the history of your chosen topic, or on languages and cultures, or on anthropology, or on arts, or on architecture. And there's also opportunity for language study therein. And both of the MRes programs have a long dissertation, a longer dissertation than your ordinary master's dissertation. The 1 year MRes, the word count for the dissertation is 15 to 17,000 words, and the 2 year MRes is 17 to 20,000 words. So these are kind of like MRes. Some universities call these MRes programs MPhil programs, but they're not taught masters programs. They're research masters. You choose your own topic and you work on it over the course of your degree in consultation with your supervisory team. You have one primary supervisor, and also if you like, you can have a secondary supervisor for your MRes too. In this sense, MRes is either designed to be a standalone thing. Some, if you want to work for a think tank or if you want to work for some other type of research outfit, many of those accept job applicants. They are more interested in job applicants with an MRes program than with an MA program because that shows that the student has done research of their own under their own motivation, under the guidance of a supervisor. But many students who do the MRes also go on to do the PhD, the 3 year PhD program after that. So yeah, the MRes program is structured accordingly. There's a bunch of core methods modules that you have to take. There's an extraordinarily wide range of electives, so you can take electives in anything from contemporary art in Eastern Europe and Eurasia to gender and sexuality, to Soviet culture, to cities and architecture. You can take language modules and you can take dissertation. And obviously, the core aspect of the MRes is the dissertation, which I think it counts for over approximately 2/3 of the overall weighting of the MRes program. It's a bit more. The weighting is slightly differently calculated in the 1 year MRes versus the 2 year MRes. But all the information about this is online on the SEAS website, so you can look into it in more detail if you like. The SEAS PhD, as I'm sure you possibly already know from having a look at the website, there's a whole wealth of different types of topics that people have studied at SEAS. These are examples of some PhD programs which have recently been completed or have almost been completed, such as queer prose in Croatia and Serbia, queer parenting in Russia, or actually in this case, among Russian parents, queer parents overseas. A bunch of other SEAS PhDs have recently been completed that aren't on here. For example, a very interesting PhD on the spaceport of Baikonur in Kazakhstan, and another PhD on anthropological PhD on a spaceport in the spaceport of Baikonur, which was completed by a PhD student of mine who was co-supervised by me and by a supervisor in the anthropology department, and another PhD on shopping malls and war in Russia, Ukraine, and Poland, which was co-supervised by myself and another supervisor in the Bartlett School of Architecture. And I mentioned those two projects in particular in order to emphasize that we at SEAS and at UCL in general encourage teams and increasingly are encouraging supervisory teams. So you can have two or even three supervisors, and your supervisors don't necessarily all have to be in SEAS. You are encouraged also to have a co-primary or a secondary supervisor in another department which is closer, which is suited to your kind of disciplinary area. And in that case, you can also, if you have a supervisor in another department, you are also in a better place to benefit from particular methods and training and theory training, which is located in those departments. So I've been following this module with a lot of my PhD students, and I think it's a very healthy and desirable model for supervision to have one or two PhD supervisors in SEAS and another one in another department. Some other departments are less flexible, but in general, there's no obstacles to that at UCL. So these, as mentioned before, these are the languages. As far as I'm aware, most of these languages are currently active. Sometimes the capacity of CESE to teach a particular language in a given year is affected by staffing availability. But if you want to polish your skills in any of these languages, you're able to do so at CESE. Whereas if you need to work on your Kazakh or on your Uzbek or on your Georgian, there are other options for that in London as well, of course, because we are, after all, in a somewhat interconnected global city. And yeah, I've already gone off on a long tangent about the research and seminar series, so I won't repeat that here. There's also a bunch of other events such as the Soviet post-Soviet, no longer the Soviet because it's somewhat out of date, but the post-Soviet press group, ultimately, arguably the name of the post-Soviet press group also needs to be changed. But there is every Wednesday, there is a kind of a group that meets to discuss kind of current events across the CESE region from a scholarly perspective. That's very lively, and that's a kind of complement to some of the other public events that take place at CESE and at UCL. And there's also options to get involved in events that are happening in all sorts of venues in London, whether it's the Ukrainian Institute, whether it's think tanks like Chatham House, whether it's arts institutions like the Institute for Contemporary Arts, the ICA in London, or Tate, or the Wellcome Institute, which focuses on the history of science and the history of medicine. I mean, you're in London. I suppose I don't have to explain that to you, but there is an extraordinary diversity of activity, of scholarly and artistic and diplomatic activity in London, and you're certainly better placed to set yourself up for an interesting and active life doing your PhD in London than in a place which doesn't offer such a wealth of opportunities. And this is both on the level of a further study as well as various types of career options which are offered at CESE and UCL also has a kind of career mentoring program which is very good and which many people take care of. Now, perhaps the most important thing is the funding of your PhD. Unfortunately, funding options are not as extensive as we would love them to be. UK institutions are all relatively impoverished in this respect, but UCL and London institutions in general are slightly less impoverished than most. So there are quite a few funding opportunities available. Katerina has helpfully shared the link to the funding page on the CESE website in this chat. Please have a very careful look at this page if you haven't started working on your applications yet. You'll see that some of the deadlines, unfortunately, have already passed. The ESRC doctoral competition, Economics and Social Sciences Research Council, was moved forward this year by a month, so the deadline has already gone for the outline applications. But fear not, London Arts and Humanities Partnership, unfortunately, is obsolete. I forgot to delete that from the application. That's my fault. Sorry, from the presentation. But the other funding opportunities are still available. Among these are the UCL Research Excellence Scholarships, which are highly competitive, Research Opportunity Scholarships, which is mostly intended for BAME applicants, but for which CESE applicants are highly encouraged to apply for. Wolfson scholarships, 16th of January deadline. These are all UCL-wide schemes, and there will be some more UCL-wide schemes announced soon. So this the site that Katerina just shared with you. Oh, I just realized that I'm shifting my browser windows. Please check these. Please check this the CESE funding page regularly because I think in a matter of we've been promised that they'll be announced in a matter of days, but who knows? It might be weeks. There will be two new scholarships announced. There will be about six new scholarships in total. I mean, six places across the whole of the Faculty of Arts and Humanities. So we'll be lucky if one of them goes to cease, but there will be two new schemes to apply for, administered by the Faculty of Arts and Humanities. In practice, I have to be honest, among the sort of 8 to 10 PhD students who regularly start at UCL, about a third receive full funding. So these, or less, in fact, because many other applicants who are admitted to the program don't receive funding and don't take up their place. So the odds of getting full funding are not great. They can be vastly increased by working very carefully on your application. So in my experience, applicants who receive funding are those who spend weeks sending drafts of their applications backwards and forwards from them to their supervisors, sharing them with friends, getting a lot of feedback. And this is for the simple reason that the committees who award the funding have hundreds of applications to go through, and their attention is distracted, and they are likely to find time and excitement for projects that speak to them as well. That just make them interested and excited. So when you put together your research projects, of course it's a scholarly project and it has to have a strong scholarly contribution, but you also need to explain why it's urgent for the world, why you're the best person in the world to do this project, and why you're uniquely positioned in terms of your existing knowledge to carry out this project, and effectively why the world and the region needs this work to be carried out. So, yeah, I just see a question. Is there a chance for those who have never published a paper to get the offer? Absolutely. I don't think at this stage funding committees are necessarily looking at your publications record yet. Obviously, if you've got some publications, you may as well put them on your CV. But I think the main PhD applicants are not necessarily expected to already be published. You're expected to have a strong academic record and a really exciting and feasible and appropriate project. And for that, you need to work on your application with your prospective supervisor. More on that in a second. There's also a couple of specific scholarships. The CEAS Foundation scholarships are open to home students, and they offer a kind of two-thirds funding. The details are all on the website. Specialist funding in Ukrainian studies is not available for this round, but should be available for the next round of applications. Quirk scholarships are UCL wide, and they are also available for CEAS students. They are intended for broadly defined scholars from underrepresented backgrounds. And there's a specialist Alexander Nash Albanian Studies scholarship. And once you start your work, there's also the Hetherington travel grant, which is named after our late beloved colleague Philippa Hetherington, who died 3 years ago of breast cancer, and in whose name this travel grant for historians doing their research at CEAS is bequeathed. So applications are welcome and encouraged from everyone holding a 2-1 upper second undergraduate degree or higher. And there are certain English language requirements as well. You need to have IELTS, I think it's 7 point or whatever exactly, I can't remember the exact qualification required. It's all on the website, but you need to have a kind of excellent IELTS score, if you have spent already a long time in the UK, some kind of certification from your prospective supervisor that your English is of native speaker equivalent proficiency. Yeah, you can find out more in due course. You can register on the mailing list on the UCL website. We encourage you to come to the CEAS in-person graduate open evening to find out more. Follow us on all the social media, blah, 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 which are all marked there. And also contact us. So contact the admissions team, MA Admissions. That's Katarina, who started the session, and Lisa Walters. Contact me if you like for general questions, for general guidance about the program and its details. My email is also on the website under my name. And please check out in details the handbooks and the various modules available for you to order on the CEAS website. The other important thing to mention at this stage, and the most important thing in a way, is that the most important person for you to contact now is your prospective supervisor, if you haven't done so already. Um, Katerina has recently uploaded some guidance onto the PhD admissions page for kind of how to go about contacting your prospective supervisor. But the broad advice is that you need to go onto the CEAS website, look at maybe you already know who you want to work with already, but if you don't, look at the details of each staff member at CEAS, um, and see how they match with your research. Go through their publications if possible, and when you reach out to them, explain exactly why you want to work with them and give them a précis of what your research project is about. I would recommend in the first instance providing an abstract, like a one to two paragraph abstract. And if the supervisor expresses interest, they'll probably ask you to send them a draft research proposal as well. But yeah, to emphasize, we're on the 2nd of December now. The next round of deadlines is starting on the 10th of January. That's the next deadline. Um, you really should have funding deadlines. I mean, you should contact the Christmas holidays are coming up. So I would heartily encourage you to contact your prospective supervisors this week with an initial idea and to send them a draft of your prospective project and your research proposal by the end of this week or the beginning of next week. And finally, many of the funding schemes have slightly different templates than the UCL template. So you need to be prepared that you're going to need to write several drafts of your research proposal outline. You're going to develop a kind of over association with your research proposal outline, and your eyes are going to be hurting by the time you've written 5 or 6 drafts of it. So you're definitely going to be needing to send drafts of it to colleagues and friends who can help you have a fresh look at it as well. There's a couple of new questions in the chat. If I already have a PhD in a different subject, will that help or hinder my application? Um, I think that entirely, it's great. It's amazing that you already have a PhD. I definitely won't hinder your application. I suppose what is necessary for you to demonstrate in your application is how you'll build upon your existing scholarly record in developing your new scholarly interests, assuming that there is some kind of overlap between them. If there isn't, that's okay. You can just say that you. So I suppose, yeah, we need to find out more about your exact research track, but it definitely won't hinder for sure, and it may well help. So in general, you're very welcome also to switch on your cameras and your microphones and ask questions out loud if you like.